Understanding compound interest through the lens of financial classics reveals a truth so profound that once internalized, it permanently alters the way a person thinks about time, money, effort, and long-term wealth creation. While the concept itself seems mathematically simple, money earning interest, which then earns more interest, the deeper lessons woven through books like The Richest Man in Babylon, The Intelligent Investor, The Wealth of Nations, Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits, The Psychology of Money, and even autobiographical writings from investors like Warren Buffett show that compounding is not just a financial formula. It is a worldview. It is a philosophy. It is a discipline. It is a quiet force that rewards patience, punishes impatience, amplifies good decisions, magnifies bad ones, and ultimately shapes financial destiny more powerfully than income, intelligence, or opportunity. Financial classics teach that compounding is not merely about money, it is about behavior, time horizon, and consistency. It is the art of allowing time to work on your behalf instead of working against you. And the individuals who master compounding do so not by brilliance, but by humility, restraint, and the ability to think far beyond the present moment. One of the earliest teachings on compounding comes from The Richest Man in Babylon, which frames compound interest as the servant that never sleeps. The book emphasizes that even modest sums, when invested consistently, grow into great fortunes through the unwavering march of time. But its deeper lesson is that compounding is only possible when a person overcomes procrastination. Every day delayed is a day stolen from compounding's potential. This book personifies money as a worker. You send a coin out to labor for you. It returns with new coins. Those coins, too, must be sent back out to work. The lesson is psychological as much as financial. Wealth is built when one learns to stop interrupting compounding. Benjamin Graham, in The Intelligent Investor, takes the concept further by tying compounding to emotional discipline. He explains that markets will always fluctuate, but compounding rewards those who remain calm during turbulence. Graham reveals the tyranny of fees, emotional trades, taxes, and constant tinkering, all of which disrupt compounding's natural rhythm. He teaches that compounding thrives in environments of stability and long-term consistency. Graham reframes compounding not as a passive process, but as a disciplined one. You must protect it. You must avoid sabotaging it. You must structure your portfolio, your habits, and your expectations to allow compounding to flourish uninterrupted. Graham's forgotten lesson is that compounding is fragile. One irrational decision can destroy years of progress. Meanwhile, Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits by Philip Fisher offers a different dimension, the power of compounding within businesses themselves. Fisher's famous scuttlebutt method encourages investors to seek companies with durable growth engines, firms capable of reinvesting profits at high returns for decades. Fisher's philosophy shows that compounding does not only occur in your account, but inside the companies you own. If a business can reinvest earnings efficiently, the investor benefits geometrically. Fisher's writing urges readers to understand that compounding happens at multiple levels. Your investment compounds, and the underlying business compounds. When both occur simultaneously, the results are exponential. Warren Buffett's letters amplify this lesson by demonstrating compounding across an entire lifetime. Buffett repeatedly credits his fortune, not to genius, but to time decades of uninterrupted compounding. His famous quote, "My wealth has come from a combination of living in America, lucky genes, and compound interest," seems humble, but the real message is clarity. Compounding only reveals its power over long horizons. Buffett did not become a billionaire at 25, 35, or even 45. The vast majority of his wealth appeared after age 60 because compounding had finally snowballed into near unstoppable momentum. His story exemplifies the central truth. Compounding works slowly, then suddenly. Those who quit early never witness the transformation. Financial classics also warn about the dark side of compounding. How negative habits compound just as relentlessly as positive ones. Debt accumulates interest. Fees accumulate erosion. Inflation compounds the loss of purchasing power. Emotional mistakes compound regret. Poor habits compound stress. Books like Your Money or Your Life highlight this, urging readers to examine not only their assets, but the invisible compounding occurring in their behaviors. Understanding compounding means recognizing that you are always compounding something, either wealth or problems. A particularly modern interpretation appears in The Psychology of Money, where Morgan Housel reframes compounding as a behavioral phenomenon. He argues that compounding is so counterintuitive to the human mind, trained for immediacy, short-term survival, and emotional reflex that most people fail to benefit from it, not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack patience. Housel explains that compounding is a test of temperament, not intelligence. It requires embracing boredom, resisting the lure of quick results, and trusting in invisible progress. The hardest part of compounding is enduring the early years, when growth is slow and imperceptible. Only those willing to endure that psychological discomfort ever experience compounding's later explosions of growth. Financial classics also highlight the importance of rate of return, even small differences. A difference of 2% compounded over decades becomes a chasm. Adam Smith's writings in The Wealth of Nations touch on this indirectly by explaining how capital grows faster in systems that reward reinvestment and enterprise. Smith's insights reveal that compounding is not just a personal strategy, but a fundamental driver of economic growth itself. Nations prosper through compounding, just as individuals do. Books on entrepreneurship and innovation also contribute to the narrative. Compounding shows up in skill development, reputation, networks, and knowledge. The best financial classics remind us that compound interest applies to everything that grows through repetition skills. Compound courage compounds. Decision-making, wisdom compounds. Wealth is merely the reflection of internal compounding expressed externally. One of the most profound lessons buried across these classics is the idea that compounding requires non-interference. The biggest threat to compounding is you, selling too early, reacting emotionally, switching strategies, doubting the process, seeking excitement, forgetting the basics. Compounding thrives when the investor stands aside and lets time do the heavy lifting. This is why Buffett repeatedly urges investors to never interrupt compounding unnecessarily. The phrase sounds simple, yet it encapsulates an entire philosophy of restraint. Another vital insight concerns time horizons as competitive advantage. Most people think in days, months, or at best, a few years. Compounding rewards those who think in decades. Financial classics reveal that the easiest way to outperform the majority of people is simply to extend your timeline. The market is filled with intelligent people, but very few patient ones. Patience, therefore, becomes a form of leverage. Finally, compounding teaches humility. It reveals that wealth is not earned solely through brilliance or effort, but through respect for forces larger than oneself, time, discipline, and mathematical inevitability. The classics repeatedly return to the truth that compounding is democratic. Anyone can access it, but few will honor it consistently. Its power is available to all, but its gifts are reserved for those willing to wait. In the end, the lessons on compound interest found across financial classics converge into a single, transformative understanding. Compounding is not a trick or a tactic. It is a way of thinking about everything in life. It is a belief in accumulation, in patience, in subtle progress, in long-term alignment, and in the quiet, miraculous power of time itself, which, when paired with discipline and consistency, becomes the single greatest wealth-building force available to any human being, regardless of background, income, or education. In this second phase of the exploration, the focus shifts from understanding the principles of compounding to understanding how to actually live in alignment with compounding, how to build the behaviors, systems, and psychological resilience required to make compounding work for you rather than against you. Because compound interest is not something you simply learn, it is something you become compatible with. You must design your financial life, your habits, your expectations, and even your identity so that compounding can operate without interruption for years, decades, and ideally generations. The first and most essential shift is learning the habit of consistency over intensity. Financial classics make this clear. Wealthy individuals do not build their fortunes through occasional bursts of brilliance, but through the quiet, repeated act of investing regularly, monthly, quarterly, annually, regardless of mood or market conditions. Consistency is the oxygen of compounding. A single missed contribution is irrelevant, but a pattern of inconsistency kills momentum. The goal is not perfection. The goal is rhythm. A slow, steady investor will always outperform the brilliant investor who cannot stay the course. Next comes radical simplification, the practice of removing complexity from your financial system so that compounding can operate smoothly. Most people sabotage compounding not because they invest too little, but because they invest in too many things, change strategies too often, or attempt to outsmart the market. Financial classics show that simplicity wins. Broad market index funds, low fees, automated contributions, and a long-term perspective. When investing becomes simple, it becomes sustainable. And when it is sustainable, compounding accelerates. The next requirement is strategic patience, a skill that sounds easy but is emotionally difficult. Patience is not passive. It is active endurance. It is the ability to tolerate boredom, volatility, slow progress, and delayed gratification without abandoning your plan. Books from Graham to Housel repeatedly emphasize that compounding rewards those who stay invested through downturns, recessions, corrections, and global uncertainty. If you cannot emotionally tolerate market fluctuations, you cannot access compounding's full power. Patience is the gatekeeper. Another indispensable habit is protecting the principal at all costs. Compounding is exponential on the way up, but devastating on the way down. A 50% loss requires a 100% gain to recover. Financial classics urge investors to guard against catastrophic mistakes, excessive leverage, speculative bets, high fees, emotional selling, and chasing trends. Compounding requires survival. You do not need to be perfect. You need to avoid ruin. This is why Buffett says, Rule no 1. Never lose money. Rule no 2. Never forget. Rule no 1. It is not literal. It is philosophical. Avoid big mistakes so compounding can continue uninterrupted. A transformative aspect of aligning with compounding is learning to detach identity from short-term performance. Investors who feel euphoric during rallies and devastated during dips become hostages to market cycles. But those who adopt the identity of a long-term compounder behave differently. They see downturns as opportunities, not threats. They focus on time in the market, not timing the market. They anchor their self-worth not to short-term results, but to disciplined behavior. This psychological detachment is what makes true long-term investing possible. Another critical behavior is increasing contributions over time. Compounding is powerful, but compounding combined with rising income is transformative. Financial classics encourage skill development, career advancement, entrepreneurship, and side ventures not only for income, but because every additional dollar invested multiplies exponentially when added early. The goal is simple. Widen the gap between income and expenses, then feed that gap into your compounding machine. A deeper, more subtle lesson from financial classics is the concept of opportunity cost awareness. Every dollar spent today is a dollar that cannot compound tomorrow. This does not mean living in deprivation. It means understanding trade-offs. A $100 impulse purchase is not just $100 lost, it is years of compounded growth lost. Over decades, opportunity cost becomes the invisible thief of wealth. Awareness of this transforms everyday decisions, helping you prioritize long-term autonomy over short-term indulgence. One of the most powerful habits for supporting compounding is automation, the structural discipline that removes human inconsistency from the equation. Automation ensures that contributions flow into investments regardless of mood, stress, distraction, or temptation. It eliminates the psychological barriers that hold people back and ensures that compounding receives a steady stream of fuel. When saving and investing become automatic, compounding becomes inevitable. Financial classics also emphasize delayed gratification, the emotional counterpart to compounding. The human brain craves immediacy. Compounding requires endurance. Aligning with compounding means learning to value future rewards more deeply than present comforts. Books like The Richest Man in Babylon frame this as self-mastery, while modern psychology frames it as emotional regulation. Either way, the outcome is the same: the ability to sacrifice now in service of something greater later. Another advanced habit is expanding time horizons, which acts as a form of competitive advantage. Most people think in days or weeks. Some think in months. A rare few think in years. Almost no one thinks in decades. Financial classics reveal that thinking in decades is the secret because compounding does nothing spectacular in short windows. Only when you extend your horizon far beyond the average person does compounding unlock its magic. A deeper insight, often misunderstood, is that compounding applies not only to money, but to skills, relationships, reputation, and knowledge. The more you learn, the easier learning becomes. The more skills you stack, the more valuable each skill becomes. The more good decisions you make, the better your judgment becomes. Financial classics urge readers to build a life that compounds in multiple dimensions simultaneously, turning you into a force multiplier of your own future. Finally, the ultimate alignment with compounding comes from embracing boring consistency over thrilling complexity. Wealth built slowly is more durable than wealth built quickly. Slow wealth compounds across generations. Fast wealth often disappears within one. The classics all point to the same timeless truth. Compounding rewards the steady, the patient, the disciplined, the emotionally grounded, and the strategically simple. In the end, learning about compound interest is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is an invitation to transform the architecture of your life, to respect time, to design systems, to practice patience, to avoid self-inflicted sabotage, to become the kind of person capable of waiting long enough for compounding to reveal its breathtaking potential. And through this transformation, you discover that compound interest is not just a financial principle. It is a philosophy of growth, a way of living, and the quiet, enduring engine behind every lasting fortune ever built. Completed.